Good morning, everyone. Good lunchtime, I would say. Thank you for joining this second talk of the Practice and Knowledge Sharing series of Future DiverCities project. As you probably already read, today we are going to focus on the theme of urban regeneration and sustainability. And as already happened in the first seminar, we have with us persons from two of the eight pilots of the project Future DiverCities. In particular, we have Milla Kallio, okay, together with Elisa Itkonen from Kuopio, okay. And let's say I maybe briefly introduce them. Elisa Itkonen is the director and lead curator of Anti Festival, okay? And Milla Kallio is the co-founder of Femma Planning, specialized in participatory urban planning, social, economic, ecological sustainability in urban planning, urban development. And let's say she will share our experience in working with diverse stakeholders to create bottom-up urban development strategies. But then, Milla, I think you'll explain a lot better than I do. I just introduced here very generally. And then the other pilot we're going to have a conversation with is Marseille, okay? And with us we have Elisabeth Becara, okay, that is coordinating the international projects in Frisch-Label de Mai, and it's also a coordinator of the project Future DiverCities, okay? So she's the super host today we have with us. And then, of course, we have the speakers, Lisa Birgan, okay, that coordinates territorial relations and youth activities at La Friche-Label de Mai and tries to foster partnerships with local cultural organizations. And some more in general, I would say she takes care of human connections within what La Friche tries to do in the neighborhood of Belle de Mai and more in general in Marseille. And then together with her, there's Nicolas Dupont that facilitates local cooperation, okay, and also works with community organization and businesses. But he also has a background in participatory audiovisual media. So he developed many citizen media projects. So somehow, of course, it tries to match this background with what La Friche is doing now in working with other organizations in the neighborhood and in wider Marseille. I'm Dario Marmo from Lama Cooperation Agency. We are partner in the project trying to bring around the table different experiences in this sort of collective exchange we are having here. At the same time, I also coordinate the activities together with my colleague Martina of the Italian pilot in Florence. So yeah, I'm very happy to have this second moment with all of you. I see there are many people here in the room with us. Thank you for joining. And of course, consider we will start with some, I would say, more frontal presentations, but ideally, this is really an open conversation among all of us, okay? So really feel free to raise your hand, ask questions, but also, if not questions, to share your experience, okay? If what you hear sounds to you as something inspiring or even recalling your practice, your study practice, your activities for where you are from. As you know, let's say half of the room is composed by other partners of the project, okay, because we use this moment as a moment for exchanging our practices, but we want it to be open to other practitioners and even curious people, interested people. So other people we don't know already, we thank you for being here, and we invite you also to share your practice and what you do. I think we can start, okay, if everyone's ready. So I would ask maybe Elisa to introduce the Anti-Festival, okay, very briefly, okay, so to somehow give a context to the Kuopio pilot. And then I will pass the baton to Milla that somehow will help us giving, I would say, even a theoretical background on participatory urban regeneration, and then maybe she will also go a little bit more practical on some projects and interventions she worked on in the recent years. Then later I will give the floor to the Marseille partners, and then really we will open the table to everyone for questions and interventions. So I thank you again. I ask Elisa, I don't know if you have a presentation to share your screen, and yeah, that's it. We can start.
Thank you, Daria. Shall I give I have a around 10 minutes presentation. Shall I do it now fully or just shortly talk about Antti?
Oh, as you prefer. If you want, you can also shortly present Antti, and then you give the presentation, as you prefer, really. It's,
right. Okay, I will go through my whole presentation at this point then. Can you see it?
yes.
So my name is Elisa Itkonen. I'm the director and lead curator for Antti Contemporary Art Festival. We are located in Kuopio, Finland, which is a small city in eastern Finland. I will shortly talk you through the whole context or contextualize whole Kuopio pilot. And we are part of the Future DiverCities project as a partner in the cluster pilots on commoning. So we are developing practices of commoning associated to the empty spaces. And we have a particular space in Kuopio that I will present in my short presentation. And also, by the way, just note, I'm not part of the official program, but my presentation, or the program of today, but my presentation is kind of like a lead up or kind of pairing Milla's presentation, which we will experience later on. So first of all, about the city where we are locating our pilot in. It's quite a small city with 120,000 inhabitants, which makes it the 8th biggest city in Finland in terms of population. But it is the biggest city in our region, in the eastern Finland, you can see on the map there. And it's a Finnish-speaking region. We have, of course, several languages in Finland and also 2 official languages, Finnish and Swedish. So this is a Finnish-speaking region. And the diversity, I would say, in demographics, it's quite low. So Antti-Festival and our stakeholders, we have identified a need for communal spaces in general that could offer a space for citizen-led activities and dialogue between different cultures too. And for this reason, we have occupied through Future DiverCities pilot a space that we now call Culture Workshop Konepaja. And it is located in an old train repair building in the middle of a rapidly changing neighborhood, which will be under development of infrastructure, housing, and so on over the next 20 years or so. And about the local context, furthermore, the pilot organizer here in Kuopio, we are a festival. So Antti is an international contemporary arts festival held annually in September. And it's a week-long festival. All the events are free of charge. And we've been here in the city for over 20 years. Actually, next year is our 25th anniversary, and we are Finland's leading live art event. But in addition to creating and organizing this 1 week long festival, we also run year-round program of participatory projects with and for the citizens of Kuopio, and also artist residencies and so on. And in 24, our activities reached around 10,000 participants in Kuopio. One of the reasons for such a quite a big number in such a small city is because we also locate our festival events in public spaces where we can reach thousands and thousands of people during the 1 week only. But going back to our pilot, this is our pilot location. It's called Culture Workshop Konepaja, Kuopion Kulttuuripaja, Konepaja in Finnish. And we are renting one hall within this very big old property. And also we are renting this yard, which is really nice in the summertime in Finland. It's been nice to organize events there too. And this is our space in its before we took over it. And it's about 330 square meters with a similar big yard. And this is, of course, how it looks now, more like we are feeling it with community events and activities, and also activities organized by the citizens. And in addition to the overall Future DiverCities project objectives, we have also set local pilot objectives here in Kuopio. It's to promote participation and agency of citizens through arts, culture, and the Konepaja space, to support the civic society and also facilitate civil democracy through our pilot activities, and to promote the future of culture in the Konepaja area. It's like a bigger industrial area, so we hope that there will be a space for culture in the future too, and we are, through our activities, also trying to influence on that. We also want to enable dialogue between the citizens, creatives, urban planners, decision makers, property owners, and also the future construction companies that will be working in the area, quite likely during the next decades. So these are our local objectives, and here's about the timeline of our activities there. So actually, Anti-Festival started to organize events annually during the festival already in 2018 in some of the spaces of this property. But in the framework of Future DiverCities project, we started our public activities in September 22. And from there till September 23, we had this sort of a community building phase and also co-designing phase of the project, and together with Femma planning, and we will hear more about Femma in Mila's presentation. And then we also organized several artistic interventions during the festival 23. And from this phase, through this phase, we were able to build a community around this space. Nowadays, we call it the Konepaja community. And it took about 1.5 years to negotiate on a rental agreement for this space, because it's a bit complicated since it's not a space that is built as an event space. And in Kuopio or in Finland, we have very strict legislation around spaces. So it took a while. And then in January 24, we finally got the rental agreement, and we were able to start the project activities like fully. And we opened the space in March and started the activities. And since May 24, we've had weekly activities there in this space. But not all the activities are organized and run by Anti-Festival. So we have 3 types of activities there in this space. We have participatory artistic projects and events created and organized by Anti-Festival and the Future DiverCities project. But then we also have activities organized by the Konepaja community members, freelance artists and creatives, local people. And then third, we have some sub-renting activities for several kinds of events and gatherings that are taking place there. This is a screenshot from the Konepaja Instagram feed. So the Konepaja community members have organized like flea markets and kids events, informal get-togethers, dinner parties and such. And local artists have organized their own festivals where they've been able to present their own work, which is a bit of a challenge in Kuopio. There aren't too many spaces where like freelance artists could actually present their work. So we've been able to facilitate that too through this project. Also, we've offered the space for local artists to work, like use the space as a laboratory space or residency space. And also we've offered the space for local activists to host their own like solidarity events and workshops and such. And more about the Konepaja community I mentioned. So it's a group of people we've been building and gathering since September 22. And in the framework of Future DiverCities, we call this group a local coalition. So we have local coalitions in every project city. And then in Kuopio, these people are coming from very different backgrounds and fields of society. And these are the people who've been active in co-designing our pilot activity and the space of workshop Konepaja overall, like monthly basis. And we've been the festival and the project, Future DiverCities project, have facilitated these gatherings one way or another. And at the moment, we have around 70 people in our WhatsApp community, which is a great number in such a quite a small city. But only 5 to 10 of them are active on regular or like weekly basis. But still, there's a really nice community formed around the space at the moment. And we're super excited for that. And then now we are starting we have started a new artistic intervention, the main bigger one for 25. It's called a Piece of Space, and it's by artist Tea Andraletti, who's also online here today. And through this project, we will respond to the aims of the pilot in general. So we will promote the agency of the people and activate them to become active participants in discourses on environmental and social justice, for example, and to explore experimental rituals of care. And also we are exploring the question on what does it mean to host a space. And this project will facilitate a series of workshops in the spring 25, and they are run with and for the Konepaja community particularly. But they are open for it. Just everyone, like all newcomers are welcome. And in the context of the festival, which takes place in September, this project will host the Konepaja space for the festival visitors, basically. And also they will run a series of performative action and probably also discursive program and so on. So we're super excited for this new project. And it will be the kind of main artistic intervention for the year, and also the kind of final project in Kuopio in the framework of Future DiverCities project. And if you want to follow all these activities, I welcome you to our Instagram accounts. So Konepaja has its own Instagram account. It's basically to promote all the events and activities that are happening. So all the community members can add their own events there. And then Anti-Festivals account is of course more like focusing on our activity that we are running in the space. So yeah, that's it. So
thank you, Elisa.
And maybe as a
yeah, please go.
Yeah, maybe just as a lead up, we are working with Milla Kallio, who will be talking later on, and I was actually kind of prepared to talk after Milla, but anyway, I just want to say that we are also committed to all that theoretical framework in our project pilot that Milla will talk you through later today. So I'm super excited. I've been super excited also to work with Milla in the framework of this project pilot.
Yes, thank you, Elisa. I'm sorry, but it's okay. I think it was interesting for everyone also to have an introduction on the pilot. So yeah, and also feel free to maybe add other linkages that come up to your mind after Mila's presentation. Very excited also to hear what you're going to develop for 2025. And maybe at the end of this cycle, we can have a dedicated moment where you present also results from next Anti-Festival at the end of 25, let's say. I would pass the baton to Mila. I already introduced, so yeah, please feel free to take the floor and share also your presentation if you have it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dario and Elisa, as well for the introductions and also for the invitation to have me here. So I will briefly talk about approaches to stakeholder engagement and maybe from a bit more theoretical point of view. Maybe I'll introduce myself first, though. So my name is Milla Kallio. I'm one of the founders of Femma Planning. Efe Okpede, my colleague here in the picture as well, is the other founder of Femma Planning. So as Daria introduced us already, we are specialized in participatory planning. So we study places and identities as well as people's everyday lived experiences in urban areas. And we try to transform this place-based and residential data into some sort of guidelines that architects or urban planners and also decision makers could use in their work. So our at the heart of our work, we feel like is the commitment to understanding different urban realities and experiences. So we aim to bring other perspectives to the planning process than the purely technical. So we think that it's not enough to know what the experts and planners think. We also need to be aware of the lived experiences of the residents and city dwellers and the diversity of those experiences. So we work a lot with different stakeholders, residents, youth, local actors doing workshops or research for municipalities or institutions or organizations that want to better understand complex urban issues or target issues related to participation. Me and Efe are both urban geographers by our background, so we quite often look at urban spaces from this geographical point of view, but then we also are very focused on social equality and social and ecological sustainability as well. And as Elisa already presented, our connection to this Future DiverCities is through Antti, having worked at the culture workshop Konepaja in Kuopio, arranging workshops for the local actors there. We built visions for the space before Antti had the contract for the rental of that space. We, for example, imagined different kinds of future utopias for the space and discussed about the values of the new space, what people felt like would be important to keep in mind when designing functions for the new space and for the community as well. Yeah, but I won't go to that much more because Elisa had such a good presentation of that already. So I will go straight to these theoretical frameworks. So I will briefly talk about these two approaches. Of course, today we won't have time to discuss all of these like very in detail, but this will be more like a reminder of these theories and approaches that are maybe in the background of many of our projects and I'm sure are quite familiar to you as well. But just a brief reminder what we mean by feminist lens in planning or intersectionality and how to define stakeholders. And then the other perspective being right to the city, so participatory planning and reimagining futures together with different stakeholders. Then as a summary, I will try to come back to the role of art and creative methods as well. And lastly, present some points to consider when planning an engagement projects. Yeah, so the goal for this short session that I have now would be to get some kind of glimpse or an idea of the theoretical frameworks behind stakeholder engagement and participation, and some points to consider from a feminist inclusion point of view when planning a project. And I'm sure in the panel or in the discussion at the end of this session, we will talk about these topics more in detail as well, but this is an introduction to that as well. So some approaches to stakeholder engagement. There's 2 questions that I got like as an introduction to this topic as well. So how could stakeholders from different sectors collaborate effectively in urban regeneration projects and plans? And what role can arts and culture play in creating sustainable urban futures? So I will try to keep those in mind when presenting my frameworks and also some case examples from FEMA's projects. With feminist lens, I mostly talk about diversity of experiences, understanding that, and thinking about who is impacted and who has the opportunity to participate when we design projects or when we talk about urban planning related processes, for example. Then the other framework being right to the city, or you could also discuss about deliberate democracy and just cities. So the basic idea being that everyone has the right to participate in the production of urban space, and that power relations are also something we should take into account when we talk about urban planning or urban regeneration as well. So firstly, about feminist theory, I'm sure it's quite familiar to most of you, but as a recap, feminism is this idea of social, economic, and political equality of people. And then when it comes to feminism, we mostly use this framework of intersectionality, which is the idea that we sometimes experience life or discrimination or benefits based on a number of identities. And this intersectionality was first coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who studied women in jails and their experiences, and realized that it's not actually just about being a woman, it's more about whether you have a certain ethnicity or social status, and all of those impact your experience. So it cannot be simplified by just saying that it's about being women or man, for example. So that is the background. So intersectionality means that people's social status and everyday experiences are affected by many factors and background influences that then intersect in different combinations in different situations. And why we think that it's important to discuss about intersectionality and use this framework is that if we are able to identify different kinds of experiences in urban spaces, for example, we can better understand what kind of effects our decisions or our projects have on those people, and understand it from different kinds of perspectives, as we only have our lived experience. So these intersections then affect experiences that people have of urban space, and also opportunities to participate and influence what kind of surroundings people have. So we might, for example, discuss about feeling of belonging, accessibility to spaces or events, then networks. People have different kinds of opportunities in their networks or do not have networks, for example. Then influence, whether you are able to influence the decision-making processes or your surroundings as well. And then presumptions, meaning how people view you as an actor or as a participant participant in a project, do they have some pre-assumptions of you based on some group of people, for example. Then another point to consider would be unequal power dynamics in decision-making spaces, and related to that and participation as well, like who gets to be asked and who is invited to participate and how. So those could be some of the points to keep in mind. Then this is one case example from Femma's work, a study that we did at the Helsinki University with students with this method called relief mapping, where we try to map out these background influences that then intersect in different places and impact on how people might experience those spaces. So for example, in this mapping exercise, we had participants going to 5 different locations around Helsinki region and mapping out whether they felt discomfort or comfort based on some of the background influencers, like gender, for example. So here we can, for example, see that in the first location, the bus station, this person felt that their gender caused quite a lot of discomfort in that space, whereas going towards the right at the dock of Otaranta, so close to the university, background influencers such as gender or ethnicity had little impact, so she felt quite comfortable in this space. So then the point would, of course, to be aware of these kind of different kinds of experiences in different urban spaces, and to think about how we could improve these spaces, maybe through artistic interventions or through urban planning or through placemaking, for example, so that people with different kinds of intersections could feel comfortable in more places around the city. Then another example is from a project that we did in the eastern parts of Helsinki, a suburb that is quite multicultural. A lot of people have multicultural and many languages that they use in their everyday lives. And it's an area that is quite discussed in the media at the time as well. And we wanted to kind of highlight that people have very different kinds of experiences in these urban spaces, and we should not look at people as one group of multicultural population who have all the same, who would share the same experience, but rather than, as they commented, such that just like Finns, we also have very individual and diverse experiences of urban spaces too. So these are some of the questions that I think are related to sustainability and social justice in regeneration, maybe from this feminist point of view. So, for example, critique of neoliberal urbanism, gentrification that could be created by green or art-related solutions. Who benefits from these projects? Kind of questioning that. And to also ensure that projects target local issues and are planned collaboratively rather than displacing communities, for example. So keeping in mind that who are the stakeholders and trying to expand beyond these traditional actors to include more diverse voices. Then in participatory planning, I think we quite often talk about this difference between tokenistic consultation and meaningful participation, so that whenever we ask residents or youth or whoever to participate in our projects or in urban planning processes, we would make sure that they are actually beneficial for the participants as well, so that it's not a situation where we only get information, but the participants are left questioning whether this was beneficial for them or meaningful for them. Yeah, then maybe using feminist methodologies to reimagine urban regeneration beyond these profit-driven models. Maybe care-centered planning could be something, post-growth planning as a sustainable approach. But maybe as the most important thing, I feel like, is that the role of community-led initiatives and co-governance would be one of the solutions to long-term sustainability, because then we can assure that the solutions that we suggest would not be coming from up to down, but more like bottom-up driven solutions and projects as well. Yes, then the second theoretical framework that I would like to discuss briefly is Right to the City. So related to participation and engagement. So Right to the City theory discusses that it is the right for inhabitants to participate fully in the production of urban space. So also the right to control the urbanization process and to institute new modes of urbanization. So not only being the recipients of practices of urban planning processes, for example, or market forces. And in our work, we quite often combine, of course, all of these theoretical frameworks, but also with participation, we like to use future studies methods so that we can kind of start reimagining futures together with the participants, so that we could transform urban planning practices, but also to transform urban spaces that we nowadays have, and maybe see what kind of more sustainable, ecologically and socially sustainable future we could have if we start from thinking a bit like outside the box and use creative methods in our work. And we think that with creative methods, it's also very important to combine them with facilitation and mediation methods, so that we can have better discussions and bring people together, and thus reimagine and discuss these complicated topics that urban futures and sustainability and urban regeneration can be. So quite often there might be some conflicts or fears that the residents or participants or even urban planners have. And in that, we think that creative methods and facilitation are very important. So one example of our work from this participatory planning perspective is in Raasepori city. It's a small city on the coast of Finland, where we arranged these future workshops in different regions around the city, meeting up with the residents and different stakeholders and trying to reimagine that what could the future of this area look like, and what are the most meaningful places or aspects of this area for the people, and what kind of future visions we could have for the city, so that we could ensure that it stays socially and ecologically sustainable, as there are, of course, many questions related to developing these areas in the future and in our world in general. Then another example of this participatory approach is this urban anarchism intervention project that we did. So there was a need to kind of work with young people with disabilities to kind of heighten their sense of belonging in urban spaces, as many times people with disabilities might feel like they are somehow excluded from public spaces, for example, or certain locations in the city where they do not feel comfortable. So in this project, we wanted to highlight their perspectives and the right to use urban space through artistic interventions. So in this process, we did workshops and city explorations on important places for the participants. And then we created these signs or marks for those spaces where they could write a message that they wanted to do and place it on an urban space, so that once they visit those spaces, they remember that even if they feel a bit uncomfortable certain times, they still also belong to these spaces, and it is their right to use these spaces as well. Another example is stakeholder engagement in Erotia, in the city center of Helsinki, where there was this need for discussing urban development, as there was this conflict situation, a lot of frustrations and misunderstandings and fear related to future developments that were led by the city of Helsinki, and local entrepreneurs or residents or actors were left a bit fearful of what is coming and how the changes will affect them. So we were able to arrange this project where we used street art as a way to kind of make their points of view visible in the urban space, but to also have these projects that would allow us to discuss these topics, but in a positive way. So we didn't want to arrange this hearing events where we will have a lot more fighting about urban planning projects, but we wanted to use this opportunity to create something new, and while we do this creative process, also discuss these conflicting topics and these perspectives and fears that the participants had. So in this process, we did background interviews, and then we had co-design workshops, and eventually painted the street, and then later on did interviews and observations of the process and how people use this space as well. And we felt in the process that when we started the interviews and started to gather people together, many people were a bit hesitant because they had these conflicts in their mind, and they didn't like us or the city or whoever was driving these urban development projects. But then once we got into the co-design and painting and everything, it became a lot more positive way of interacting together, and we had a positive experience of that. Yes. So questions related to inclusive stakeholder engagement, I think some of the important things are like shifting from consultation to co-creation, so embedding participatory governance models, then thinking about resources like time, money, expertise for participatory processes. So at least in Finland, we quite often see that we do not have enough time or money or expertise in these urban planning processes for stakeholder engagement, and then that leads to a situation that the engagement might be quite shallow and cause more negative feelings than actually be beneficial for the participants or for the city or whoever is running the participatory process. Then asking the right questions, and maybe also from the right people, that we should understand the local context and the issues that are present in those local areas or places or suburbs, and then thinking about who is impacted by this. Then lastly, how or what kind of role arts and culture could play in creating sustainable futures. So this is based on what I just presented, but I think these 3 points are at least very important in our projects, and some of the findings that we've been very happy about in our work, that we feel creative methods and using artistic interventions, for example, can help urban planning or these sustainability projects in reimagining futures and transforming practices with creative thinking and methods. And then secondly, exploring diverse experiences and making those visible in the urban spaces. And then thirdly, as I just explained, about discussing sensitive topics and mediating conflicts by co-creating together and having this concrete creative part of the project. Then lastly, some points to consider when planning an engagement project. Of course, there could be like pages and pages of this, but I just wanted to say that there's a lot of resources for community engagement, participatory urban planning as well. This is one example from this urban diagnosis from a gender perspective that is produced by Collective Bund 6 in Barcelona. So, for example, they have these very clear checklists where you can see that how your project is doing with participation. For example, is there something you should consider to add, or is there some group of people you should ask, or what could you do to improve the participation or improve inclusivity in your participatory processes? But maybe some of the most important questions I feel like is to always ask who is affected and who are the stakeholders, and is someone or some group missing from these discussions then. And then thinking about the methods, who can participate, and are people's different abilities and skills considered and various methods used? So for example, not everyone is very social and keen to work in groups. Is it possible for somebody to do more independent work, or is it possible to use creative methods, or is it possible to use some sort of questionnaire, or what is proper for this group of participants, for example? Yeah, and then lastly, the value and impact. What is the value and impact for those who participate? So we don't just take people's time, but also benefit them on a longer period of time. But this is, of course, not like a exhaustive list. It's just an idea what I feel like are maybe the most important questions to remember when planning a project. Yes, this was me. Thank you.
Thank you, Milla. That was great. I took a lot of notes and I think I have a ton of questions to make, but I won't make them now, okay? Instead, I would rather give the floor also to our French partners. And so maybe then later we can also try to see what are the parallels and the commonalities, or just the examples or even the differences between approaches you might have. Okay, so as done before, I would maybe ask Elizabeth to briefly introduce the pilot in Marseille, and then we move to Nicolas and Lisa. Okay, I know you have a dynamic Miro presentation to share for that. Okay, so let's see that. And to all participants here, I don't know if it's also your case, but I just noted down really some points I would like to ask about to Milla later. Okay, so do the same also for this presentation and be ready, because then later we really open up the conversation to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dario, for sharing this. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm going to share my screen very quickly with all of you. Just to tell you a little bit about who we are here at La Friche La Belle de Mai. So we are located in Marseille, in the south of France. We are in the second biggest city of France. And as you zoom in, you can see in La Friche, La Belle de Mai, we are located in the area called La Belle de Mai, which is the 3rd district of Marseille, and it's located right here. It's a district that is in the center of the city, but it's a bit different from the rest of the center because it is old industrial space. La Friche used to be a tobacco factory that was then repurposed into a cultural third land, experimenting an urban project development, kind of like the pilots we're developing, but at a different level. And we are located very close to train racks, as you can see, which indicates a lot of connections with the industrial area and the rest of the neighborhood. And I have made a little pathway to show you that we have looked for a pilot space in vicinity to La Friche to work on the cooperation aspect of the project and how it's linked to our space directly. I will then leave the floor to my colleagues who have been working on this and who have been really the ones acting on stakeholder activation.
Hi. Non, je peux enlever le mien. Sorry. So I'm just going to let Elizabeth share the screen again because we'll need it. Thank you. So maybe just to start quickly, I'm Lisa, and as Dario introduced, I'm like making the link with social structures in the neighborhood, and my colleague Nicola will introduce himself later on, but maybe just to make it quick, he's fostering neighborhood stakeholders cooperation. So I think it's really linked with what Mila said. So thank you for this presentation, which was actually great. And we have also lots of questions to ask afterwards. But maybe to start, we wanted to introduce a bit the story of Future DiverCities for us, like how was it in Marseille. So it will be a bit like historical, but we'll try to make it fun. So first of all, I think it's really interesting what you said, Mila, with all this question of neoliberal urbanism and green art gentrification and all the question of who benefits from all this kind of project, because for us, as being La Friche and as being this huge art space in the poorest neighborhood in Marseille, it was a huge question because we could have make this project in La Friche, but we thought it was more interesting to actually like go out of La Friche and go in the neighborhood to do this project. However, it was complicated because in the neighborhood, lots of people working there, institutions working in La Belle de Mai are critical from La Friche because it's an art space that at the really beginning was a space for artists to experiment and was not really focusing on the territory where it was implanted. But then, since I would say around 10 years, it really shifts. And now we are really like questioning our place in this neighborhood also as as people, as an institution which tries to foster cooperation and facilitate links between the stakeholders in the neighborhood and not only like create new projects in La Friche. So it's what we try to do with Future DiverCities, but at the beginning you can guess that then it was complicated with all the stakeholders which were like, okay, La Friche, what are you doing outside of your walls? And will it be a new big European project? So in order to start, we were like, okay, we actually need to, of course, meet with public policy officials in Marseille to understand their agenda and understand like where could we work, like in La Belle de Mai. But then from the really beginning, we're like, okay, first of all, our team, we need to just go out of the worlds of La Friche and work in the neighborhood in order to understand it by ourselves. Because, for instance, for me and my colleague Nicolas, it was, we know the neighborhood. We spend lots of time like in the different places and with the different inhabitants of the neighborhood, but it was not the case for all our colleagues of the project. So we wanted to actually have these times of just walking and looking around and being like, okay, this is a place, this is a neighborhood, and we try to understand the the urban dynamics that are in this neighborhood first. But then from the really beginning, we're also like, okay, we need to find this place where the project will be in a participatory way. So it was really a long time. We're like, okay, we need to not have only our own point of view on the neighborhood, but to make it with other people living the neighborhood. So for that, we're like, we need different kind of people who actually experience the same space, but with different kind of eyes and ways to sense it. So I mean, for me, it really makes sense with what you said, Mila, about intersectionality. And for us, we're like focusing on cultural rights and the fact that we need to have different point of views in order to be the more accurate as we can be on the space that we're going to choose. So we started by doing walks and mapping the neighborhoods with so pupils from the different schools that are in the neighborhoods, but also people with disabilities living in the neighborhood that we worked with, and also elders. Okay, j'arrive pas à le dire. Sorry for the French, English, sometimes it's complicated, but elderly, okay. People living in the neighborhood too. And it was really interesting walks because then we realized that according to who they were, there are really different point of views on the space and in which spaces did they feel comfortable or not. Because we had like 3 main questions, which were like, what are the green spaces in the neighborhood? In which space do you feel comfortable? And what are the... Yeah, and what would you like to see in the space? And which was really interesting with the pupils. They wanted to see more trees because we don't have much in the neighborhood. But it was also really interesting, for instance, with the people with disabilities to realize that actually they couldn't even go to some space because just the road was too narrow. So it was really interesting to share all these different point of views in the neighborhood. And after all this mapping time, let's say, we also decided to choose the space where we wanted to make this project all together. So first, I need to say, like, for me, it's really important that we chose this methodology of trying to do everything in a participatory way, but then we lost a lot of time because it was really long, but I think it takes time to make it the best way, but it was really long. So then you can see like the picture where we were actually like choosing, like, so we selected 6 different spaces in the neighborhood, and we had like some school teacher who came to select, and I mean, so some stakeholders that actually did the works with us came in order to choose which space we wanted to make this Future DiverCities program happen. And then I'm gonna let my colleague Nicola explain you what happened next, because it's a long story.
Hi everybody, so I'm Nicola. I'll try my best, but my English is not as good as English of Lisa and Elizabeth, so maybe I will need their help. Yes, we finally found our place, which was a space, which was a private space, but in a public area. So we had to spend a lot of time in that place to reassure the owner of this space and inhabitants around. So you can see this flyer, and with Elizabeth and other people from the local coalition, we spent some time on this public space to inform, to tell everybody what we wanted to make the project we wanted to make, and eventually it ended with assembly of the owners, and we were there to convince them to go on with this project, and everybody was eventually agreed to go on, but there weren't enough people to decide to validate the process legally. So we couldn't spend more time. The next assembly was like 6 months later, so we had to stop there. So we spent a lot of time on this space, and we had to change. So maybe you can go on with the...
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, just for us, it's really like a TV show what happened in Marseille, because it was so long and we tried many things, but you will see that stuff happen. And it was really interesting at the end. But just maybe before, like the thing of changing of plan, I think it was interesting what you said, Mila, about the feeling of belonging, like who has the networks, like who gets invited to participate and how. And that's why for us it was really interesting to go through, like, because when Nicola said we had this flyer, you have to imagine that we spend all our lunchtime like in the restaurant, in the place, in order to speak to all the people who could get involved like on this place. But it didn't work, so it was, I have to admit, a huge disappointment after all this work. But then we're like, okay, what can we do? And we need to find a space. And so then we decided that, okay, we already also know some spaces, because we also, as professionals, have expertise on the neighborhood, and we don't have time to go back to the other spaces that we spotted, just also because they were not available anymore, the other spaces. So then I remembered that actually I was often going to neighborhood parties organized by the stakeholders, like social stakeholders that I'm working with. And they were doing like one of these neighborhood party in a garden, Le Jardin de Crimée in French, a really beautiful garden, which is actually private, but it's owned by what do you call it?
It's a social landlord that is owning the space, and it's technically private. However, they have the wish to open it actually on certain times to citizens of the area. They don't want it to make it a public garden, to make sure that they have this time and resources to maintain the space and make sure that it's a space that people can actually use for itself.
Yeah. Did you hear everything? Because yeah, okay, cool. So we thought it was actually interesting, even though it was not a public space, but a kind of private one, because it was partly open. And then maybe the challenge was bigger, because then we were like, okay, we almost don't have any garden in this neighborhood. We realized with the pupils that they want gardens, they want like these trees and plants. And we have one which is actually kind of private, but it's okay to maybe open. And another thing which really interesting for us is that already different stakeholders that I was working with were already working on this garden and already trying to open it. So we're like, okay, we think it's more interesting to actually foster this dynamic that the stakeholders are already implementing than create a new one in a new space. And we didn't have time anyway. So we're like, okay, let's go for this project and work with social structures already working with inhabitants and already working on the question of commoning and on like this land that we want to share with more people. So first of all, we went to see these social structures and we're like, okay, we are La Friche, but do you want to work with us on this European project? And so they were like, okay, let's do it, even though it was same like, oh my God, this is a European project, it's going to be huge. Anyway, they said yes, to make it short. So then we all together chose the artist that would intervene in the space. And for us, what was interesting was not really an artistic intervention in itself, but was more that these people were able to bring the inhabitants of the garden and the inhabitants from the neighborhood to question themselves about this common that they had in the neighborhood and what they wanted to do with it. And what I think is really interesting with same what you said, Mila, about artistic intervention and the fact that it's also a way to step aside, like how you think urban planning. For us, it was the same because, for instance, one of the main intervention the artistic team is doing in the garden is actually gardening. So for us, gardening is actually a way to create a sense of belonging for the inhabitants. Is that now it's not only like a private space where sometimes the kids go playing, but it's also where they plant like the, I don't know mint and stuff that they're going to use in their kitchen. And it's also like, okay, we plan together, and now it belongs to the entire neighborhoods. And what do you do with all this? And also to realize that in this garden, they have like, for instance, trees that they cherish a lot, and like how to consider them as that they are also like living in the space, and how do we share this space? So for us, it's really interesting that this artistic workshop that they are doing right now, like on a weekly basis, is actually creating this sense of this sense of belonging, of like something common is created in this garden. So, and just to finish on the project, because I think it was really related with what you said, Mila. It's right now they are also working on a weekly basis in order to have a huge picnic in April. We decided that it would be like the end of it would be a huge picnic. But what's interesting is like it's not a picnic in order to have a picnic. It's a picnic where actually all the inhabitants will like cook together, and we will create a huge fabric all together in order to sit on it. And the plants that we will eat will actually be the one that they would have been worked on during all the different workshops before. So we're like, all this long process ends by a meal that you all share in the garden, is also a way to, I don't know how to say, but to end a first step, because for us it's a first step what we did on just fostering this feeling of common belonging on this space. And what's really interesting, and then I will let Nicolas talk about like cooperation. Non, tu veux que je fasse? Oui, bien sûr. So what's really interesting, I think, with what happened is that, so first of all the different stakeholders which are already working on the garden, they were not working together. So for us, it was weird to realize that actually we're like, okay, we are coming on Wednesday and us on Saturday, but they didn't work together. And actually, because we were like an outsider, let's say, stakeholder, then we're like, okay, but we need to all meet together. So we started to organize all this time with all the different stakeholders, and they started to know each other. And it was really nice, because at the last meeting, they were like, actually, we never really cooperated on what we're doing in the garden. And now we are just doing it, and it's much easier and it makes more sense. So we are really like, first of all, I think we are really happy that this is one of the things that this project created, is like the stakeholders are actually cooperating now on the garden and this question. And for instance, there is like another thing that might happen in the garden, which seems to be tiny, but is actually really huge, is that the inhabitants always ask for the water to come in the garden, like to have a tap in the garden. And the owner was always against it, because it would be complicated, because it's public. I mean, because everybody has to pay also for the water in the garden. And actually with this project, it might end it that actually we're gonna have a tap, and that all the inhabitants will have to discuss how to use it. And because they all pay for it, it's a real question of, okay, how do we actually, with just one tap, then you can like go through all the question of common, and like, how do we share this resource? And I think it's super interesting that it's going to happen this summer, especially because it's really hot in Marseille, and it's going to be a really good question. Yeah, I think I'm actually good with what I wanted to tell. Tu veux que je parle de la coopération territoriale? Okay. Yeah. So actually, I'm going to talk about Nicolas' work.
It's going too fast for me. I'm sorry, I can't follow.
But I know, but we work always together, and I know pretty well his work. So I'm going to just tell a few words, because I think it was same. I mean, I love your presentation, Mila. So I was just like, wow, it's so much linked with what we do. But so I think it's really interesting, first of all, because you need to realize that our jobs, Nicolas and me, didn't exist a few years ago in La Friche. So I arrived 4 years ago, and Nico 2 years ago. And what Nicolas is doing is actually fostering cooperation in the neighborhood. So what's interesting is that it could have worked in any other like institution in the neighborhood, in the way that is not really working for La Friche, but is working for the neighborhood. So what he's actually doing is organizing like different seminars with a huge amount of stakeholders from the neighborhoods, but also inhabitants and also like collective, in order to discuss all together. First of all, we had to discuss all together what are the main challenges in the neighborhood that we want to tackle. And it was really interesting because then it took so much time, but we ended up with 5 big challenges. And we realized that what we did was actually shared analysis of the neighborhood, and shared analysis with inhabitants, institutions, workers. It was like so much different people. And we had also to tackle many different issues in this meeting. For instance, the fact that we didn't have the same language. We didn't experience the same neighborhood in a way, because for me, for instance, it's my working place, but for other people, they tackle so many different issues, for instance, mobility. And then first of all, we had to find a way to discuss together. And so then also artistic intervention in a way, even though it was not artistic, but the fact that we had to always step aside, like find different ways how to discuss. Sometimes it's with, sometimes it's with drawings that actually we had to discuss, was a way to create this common analysis of the neighborhood. And just to finish on this, because I think it's really interesting, is now what we do is also to invite the public stakeholders like municipality and and the region. I mean, different people who are actually in charge of urban planning, in charge of our fundings. And we tell them, okay, now you have all the stakeholders from the neighborhood who actually did this shared analysis. So if you want to answer the needs of the neighborhood, just come and listen. And it's really interesting that we do a kind of bottom-up way of thinking, like urban planning in the neighborhood. I mean, we are really at the beginning of it, but it's so interesting that it's actually working. And we realize that the institution are actually listening to what we have to say right now. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry I was super long.
No, but that was super interesting. Thank you both, Nicolas and Lisa. And well, you have touched, even in practical terms, many of the points also that Mila highlighted before, I would say. So I see how you also started with mapping activities. There was for sure a question with time, so how much time a process can take, and also how to talk not always with the usual suspects, but trying innovative ways to reach those ones that maybe are not used to participate, let's say, and have a say on the city, okay? So I think these are all points also that have been touched. So I don't know if you both have, one for the other, some questions or things you would like to know more. And I would also open this to all other participants here in the room.
Just maybe a comment from me that
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always so amazing to share like on practical level also what we are doing in these different locations, because we often meet on Zoom and we have all this project management stuff, but then also to actually know on practical level what is happening in Marseille and in Kuopio and so on. So yeah, just to comment that I'm just always so fascinated by the kind of political power in community, and also like getting together, and how actually that can be super powerful, and also the beauty of contemporary art in terms of what art is actually. So it can be just, we have a very open up map. You mentioned that the art was actually the gardening, and I guess also our artist Thea is using similar practices in a piece of space that we are working on. So artistic practices are also super diverse and allow us to do a lot of things. But yeah, I actually wanted to, maybe I start with my question to Mila, because I was, if we still, we have maybe time for also more practical examples if you come up with any, Milla. I was interested in the hearing more about the participatory governance concept. I don't know if you have any examples of some projects that might where the co-governance have been utilized, because it's a bit different than what, for example, if I understand correctly the term, what we are doing in Kuopio, for example, we are co-creating and engaging the community, but we are basically managing the space on our own. So does this mean that there are are there some examples on co-governance? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if I have any concrete examples now, but I think it's yeah, as you said, co-governance is of course it's difficult, but I also see that maybe having that as a goal and then kind of advancing step by step is also one way of doing that. That maybe it's not possible to start a project with this co-governance in place, because you need to build those kind of structures so that it's possible to co-govern if there is not already an existing community. But I think as I've understood also Anti's work with the Konepaja, that you are aiming towards giving more decision-making power to the community and to the people, even though now it's still early phases, so it's not maybe possible for the community to arrange and function without the help of Anti's organizational abilities and networks and so on. But that doesn't mean that that couldn't be the long-term plan, for example. But I think maybe as Lisa also mentioned about, I think it was a good point that you discussed about the already existing networks and communities and places that are there, and kind of instead of how would I put it? Instead of you creating something completely new and doing something on your own, you use the existing networks and give them a lot of power to do decisions themselves as well. So I think one way of seeing the co-governance is through sharing power, or dispersing it a bit wider, so that not everything has to be in your hands or our hands, for example. And then, of course, with that, I think comes trying to design these structures so that the communities can find sustainable ways of working together and making decisions and sharing resources, as you discussed with the water and everything. So I think it's very helpful to have these steps in the process where the communities kind of have to develop ways to make decisions and handle these kind of issues, and kind of they then create the way of working together or co-governing together. And maybe ultimately then some of these communities, they can function as themselves and they don't need that much help in the governance, for example, or in the organizational things. But of course, quite often, these kind of initiatives or projects that are based on communities and co-creation, they need some kind of facilitation or mediation, that somebody brings people together and somebody kind of pushes a bit that, okay, if we do this together, we can have something nice together, and nobody can do it alone. But quite often, as Lisa, you also explained, that there was a lot of different organizations or actors, but there was not so much cooperation before then you come there and you invite everyone to the same table. So I think that's quite often what happens, that people are not in the same table, so you need to invite them.
Maybe, sorry, I will just shortly comment on that. Thanks, Milla. for opening that up more. We are definitely here in Kuopio giving space for the community to make decisions on like activities and what is happening there in the space. They are actually like organizing completely like citizen-led activities too. But maybe my question in Kuopio's case would be how to actually like on practical, structural, financial level to build some sort of co-governance model, because after the Future DiverCities, because now Anti-Festival is the legal like a tenant in the space, and we are managing like on legal and financial level the space. I'm actually now thinking for the future, would we be able to somehow build a co-governant model to manage the space in the future after the Future DiverCities project, when we don't, for example, have the financial resources. So that's why I was also interested in hearing more. Yeah, it will be a big case for us to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting question.
Yeah, and maybe so I see you are moving toward these steps, I would say, no? So first mapping, listening, calling people around the table, no? Also as maybe a partially external actor, no? That can open up this conversation, then having some small interventions that can somehow, yeah, I would say dispersing power, as Mila was saying, no? So trying to give to different people really the possibility to have a say, to do something, and then it goes more practical. Okay, so the water example is it's perfect, I would say. Okay, because then water is something that is practically needed then to move the garden, and then it can go bigger, no? So I would say, Elisa, what you were saying on Cornepaya is something bigger, no? Because then you're talking about how to institutionalize some sort of participatory practices to manage together a space, no? So yeah, I don't know, like, of course, here we have La Friche. There is some sort of community cooperative, okay? So it's an historical, I would say, institutionalization of such a process, okay? But then here the point is really their challenge that they're going outside their walls. You said it many times, no? How to go outside our walls, no? So and so I think the interesting point, Elisa, that you're mentioning is somehow you have to build some sort of new governance inside the walls, okay, of Cornepaya, and they're trying to experiment new models to do something with people, with organization on other spaces that are not La Friche itself, no? So I see a parallel there. Of course, it's a very big challenge. And on the other side, there may be many, I would say, legal also governance tools to use. But the point really is to then define together with the people which model could work, no? So at a certain moment, you said it, Mila, no? The point is also the benefit check. To have at a certain point in the process the benefit check. So if we decide to be organized that way to manage the space, who's benefiting from it? No? So what is somehow the interest of people in co-managing a space? No? I think this is a great challenge that goes beyond even the planning itself, no? Because it goes toward management really of commons and of common spaces at least. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a very big question and point. So I don't know if there are other suggestions or even reaction, no, to your point, Elisa, on that. That was mine. Okay, I see the process that leads there, let's say, but then how it ends, it's very difficult to say, I think, in advance. Lisa, I don't know if you're muted, I guess. So if you have.
True. Yeah, no, for me, I think it's really interesting. So what you said, Dario, because actually I have the same feeling that we experienced something really parallel. And for us, so La Friche is also a cooperative. As you said, I mean, we didn't really introduce the space, but To make it short, we have like 70 different associations working in La Friche, and we are working for the cooperative of La Friche. And even though we are trying to cooperate with other people outside of La Friche, so it's a lot of cooperation. But something really interesting, for instance, is that in all this cooperation process, as I said, we are also like involving inhabitants. And also you have also to put in context, so still the poorest neighborhood in Marseille. So lots of people like have really harsh life condition, and they still give free time to be involved in like for instance, like the cooperative of La Friche. And for us, it's asking a lot of questions that they also bring is you are paid for this time, we are not. And it's really true. And it's one of the things that we want to tackle soon is actually who benefits. And so, but still the people like get involved. So we think that they benefit for sure, because otherwise they wouldn't give this time, but still it's questioning, because then what you said, Mila, about power relationship, who gets the power in this cooperation, and we are always like we always try to be really careful with not using the people, because for us, of course, it's really important to have inhabitants in the cooperative, but once again, we are paid. They are not, and for us it's our job, and for them it's just their free time. So it's really interesting, and we really need to tackle it in order to maybe find ways actually that people would be paid. So maybe not in a financial way, but they would get something like not concrete. Ouais, vas-y.
To jump on what Lisa.
Attends, désolée.
To jump on what Lisa just mentioned, what we really try to create in the pilot is really at what she's explaining is that sense of ownership, is that sense of community. And when you manage to create a community, it's flowing. It's like a cloud moving around, but it's the same conglomeration of people moving around together. So really what we tried in this bottom-up approach, and what really embarked us on Future Diversity, is this whole bottom-up approach and this evidence-based recommendations that we can then bring, which is how we tried to adapt in a very different way. I thought it was super interesting that Kuopio came from a very theoretical mindset. Our way of doing things in La Friche is usually quite bottom-up, and then we theorize what we do, usually in our everyday life. But creating that community helps create that sense of ownership and that sense of belonging, which actually in hindsight helps to want to take care of a space really, and to want to put time and energy in that space. And it comes through seeing a community that you belong in and feeling like you have a space to join in, whether it's a mental space or a physical one. And we try to make that visible by planting things physically and mentally in the brains of people, by having a little plant that someone has to come and water at some point during the week or at some point during the month. You create this kind of ownership. And we have seen, for example, some of the kids, they're really like, it's my plant. This is mine to take care of. So I will be the one taking care of it. No one else will. And please give me the resources so that I can continue doing that. So I think in hindsight, what we'll try to do when Future Diversity ends is really give back those recommendations and all those lessons that we have learned in this long experimentation, because Future Diversity is this long experimentation, to then try and give back to public policies and decision-making people that, yes, sometimes there is a need to take time, as Lisa said, or see things from a different perspective, as Milia explained, or take the time, map things, take all the time for all of that before making decisions, embark people in the decision-making process, and it will definitely create something, an endeavor, a sense of belonging, anything that will make them want to be part of it. And that's really what I learned the most from this project in the pilot and as a coordinator of all of this adventure.
But thank you, Elizabeth, also from speaking from your heart, I would say, in this last intervention. That was very nice to hear. Unfortunately, I have to be also the timekeeper here, so I know our 90 minutes are over. Just to be sure no one's left out from the conversation, is there any question that you still have also for the rest of the participants? If not, then I thank you all. Again, I remember that this will be recorded and will be online also for other maybe colleagues, friends that you know might be interested in this. This will be available on YouTube. You will receive an email with information on on when it's available. And of course, remember that in April, we will have another topic and another talk on urban biodiversity practices. Okay, so this will be in the second half of April. So please join on that too. It will be, I guess, equally interesting like it was this one. I thank again Milla, Nicolas, Lisa, Elisa, and Elizabeth for sharing their experience. And thank you a lot again, and I hope to see you if you want next month. Thank you. Bye.